So May was a pretty crazy month, not only because of the Business Insider video that was released, which I assume most of y'all are coming from, but also because of the crazy movement in the stock market, which I'll get to in a little bit. I'm going to start off by talking about my net worth and where things stand at the beginning of June, and then pivot over to talking a little bit about the behind the scenes of that Business Insider video, as well as some of the questions that y'all have submitted. In case y'all are new here, this is something that I used to do on a monthly basis where I would talk about my net worth, as well as talk about some of the big purchases or some of the big things that I expect to be doing for the next month. So starting off with my Fidelity account, which houses a majority of my liquid net worth, I have $446,577.97 in there, broken across a couple of accounts. My biggest account is my main core brokerage checking savings kind of combination account, which is a Fidelity cash management account, which has $130,000, give or take $100 or so. This is my primary high yield savings account, checking account. A lot of money just flows in and out of this account, and it just makes it easier because I don't have to manage multiple accounts for high yield savings, checking, and so on and so forth. And I do that accounting on a separate spreadsheet. My second largest account is my Meta 401k, which has $125,202.67 in there currently. At this point, I'm primarily contributing to my after-tax or mega backdoor Roth in this case. So not a lot of movement in this case, usually about $5,000 or so every month in terms of contributions, but I'm getting close to the max. The 401k from my last employer is a little bit interesting. It does show that I have $108,952.56 in there, but because of the vesting schedule on the 401k match, I did have a sizable amount of the match there that hasn't vested and probably never will. So I actually only have $89,590.93 vested within that old employer 401k. In terms of more personal accounts, I have my Roth IRA, which is sitting at $62,331.68, and my HSA, which is sitting at a little over $20,000. My Schwab account, which is really just the container for all of my stock vests, got a nice bump this month because of the stock vesting, and in this case, I now have $34,766.42 in that account. The other piece of good news for this month is because of the fact that I needed to hit a credit card sign-up bonus, I decided to pay off my medical debts, which was sitting at just on a payment plan 0% interest rate a little bit early. Instead of paying it off in October of this year, I decided to pay it off early so that I could hit that bonus. And so now I am officially fully debt-free. I don't have any debts from any provider. So all in all then, my total liquid net worth as of the beginning of June sits at $461,982.76, which is an increase of $33,585.14 from last month. In terms of how much of this was contributions versus how much of it was the market movement, about 5% on the S&P 500 in May, about $16,373.67 was from direct contributions, either from the stock vesting, 401k contributions, or HSA contributions. Moving on to the thing that most of y'all are probably here for, and it's just overall chatter about the Business Insider story and the video and everything else inside of it. And bear in mind, I'm still taking questions. If you want to leave a question in the comments below, feel free to just type it out and I'll get back to it either in a comment or I'll follow up in a separate video. I know that one of the big things that a lot of people were asking for within the video is a budget spreadsheet or just some of the spreadsheets that were shown in the video. And I'm kind of working on making sure that they're in a template form that isn't just scattered bunch of formulas and notes and so on and so forth. So that'll take a little bit longer, but I'm hoping to get that out sometime in the future. So starting off with some of the backstory of like how this even happened in the first place. So back in January or so, Business Insider put out a post on their YouTube channel looking for volunteers, I guess, for a new series that they were trying out titled Cost of Living. The initial pitch was that they would find two people in similar roles in different parts of the country or even different parts of the world. They would sort of go about their day showing how much they spent on things, how much they earned, and do like a comparison about, the cost of living, the title of the series. And so given the fact that I was already talking about my personal finances on a YouTube channel, as well as Discord servers and so on and so forth on Reddit, you name it, I decided to apply and didn't really expect much, but they ended up reaching out and we ended up doing the shoot. The actual video shoot happened in early February, right? So it's been quite a few months. I kind of forgot about it. I was kind of expecting that they would just not air it at all, or they were maybe looking for someone to do like the comparison with. And given my situation, which is I would describe as borderline TLC content, um, I imagine that it would have taken a lot of time. But in the end, around a couple weeks, or well, a week before the video was posted, they reached out saying, hey, we're getting ready to finalize things. And I was like, oh, okay then. I didn't have any insights into how they would edit the video, how they would sort of frame the video. This was totally up to them in terms of creative freedoms. Although the part about the beginning of how much I would need to retire and so on and so forth, there were some, we'll call them creative liberties that they took in order to sort of frame the video and start it off. One thing I didn't expect as I was going through the video then was that they took out the sort of head-to-head comparison thing in the entirety and sort of changed the format to be more just CNBC Millennial Money, but Business Insider coded. All in all though, I was pleasantly surprised with how well the reaction was to the video, and I'm hoping that it started some conversations about FIRE and savings, although especially given the fact that I earn so much, my one worry is essentially that people are going to look at it and be like, oh, typical tech worker earning this much, of course they're able to save and for early retirement and so on and so forth. And I think that my income definitely makes it easier to save for early retirement, but I don't want that to detract or discourage people from trying to achieve their financial goals, even if it isn't at the pace or the scale of someone working in tech can achieve. So starting off with the first question of the Q&A, talking a little bit about influences from a young age, talking about whether I wanted or whether I had initially imagined that I would be doing this stuff in the first place. And the answer is kind of a bit of yes and no. I actually was a kind of terrible student back in high school. I didn't have the best grades. And if you grew up in California or like went to school in California, and there's a two-tiered sort of college grant program, Cal Grant A and B, in terms of financial aid for college. And I think I barely made the cutoff for Cal Grant A. So I really wasn't like a stellar student, not in the running for like valedictorian or anything like that. Just sort of had mostly average, maybe slightly above average grades in high school. I guess it was kind of strange then to go from like an average student in high school-ish to like a very, very studious student, I guess, in college. I found the coursework relatively easy, but also like something that I really was interested in. And I feel like that really helped in actually keeping me engaged in the coursework and actually getting those grades. As for the personal finance side of things, that was something among, besides personal finance, also just my love of travel, as well as a lot of other things about being more introspective and just thinking a lot about my decisions. A lot of that stuff was things that I sort of attribute to my mother. She taught me a lot, and she was a really, really great mentor. And I'm hoping that to a certain extent that I can use this platform as a way to sort of give some of that legacy and share some of that legacy to more people. I think that she went about her personal finances and went about life, I feel like, in a very thoughtful way. Even if not all of the choices were great choices, there were always lessons to be learned or opportunities to be had. Another big category of questions came from folks that were either new grads, CS majors, or looking to get into CS and so on and so forth, looking at the landscape, especially given sort of my, I guess, relative level of success. I think one of the things that I do want to say as a disclaimer, though, is that I am still very, very early in my career. I haven't hit 3 years of actually doing full-time work. And while age and years of experience is absolutely no strict indicator of wisdom here, I would say that I am currently maybe succeeding, though I wouldn't consider myself successful. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, and I don't think that I have all the answers. I don't know if I even have necessarily good answers. When I think back to my experience in undergrad then, even before all of this AI stuff blew up, one of the things that I noticed is that there was a very obvious split between people that were very ready for work in industry and people that were not, right? And I deliberately say, or I deliberately avoid using the term good students and bad students because that's not necessarily a very strict indicator of how well you'll do in industry, although that is one sort of proxy marker and maybe something that some companies do care more about than others. But it was very clear that some kids were a lot more prepared for work in industry, either getting internships or so on and so forth, research, versus others who didn't seem to have as much of that sense of urgency in the first place, or the tools necessary to sort of succeed during their time in undergrad as well as beyond. I think then within AI and where we're at currently with the job market, and again, I am not close enough to new grad anymore where I can feel like I can empathize as much with the folks who are currently in the job market as a new grad, and also not disconnected enough to really give a good assessment of where the job market has been historically, right? So sort of going off the top of my head and sort of intuition, but I feel like within the age of AI, this split is probably just even much worse and makes it so that you had to stand out much, much more in order to get the same opportunities that myself or other people did get when they were in their undergrad. One of the books that sort of inspired me in this sense is So Good That They Can't Ignore You, or So Good They Can Ignore You by Cal Newport. And the overall core thesis of that book is essentially that instead of indexing on sort of passions or things like that, it sort of flips it on its head, where passion or at least enjoyment of something comes from being good at something, right? And the way to sort of unlock a lot of these opportunities in the higher tier of the job market, I guess you could describe it as, is by being exceptionally good at something. And I think that in the age of AI, this is a very, very valuable skill. It is something that you can cultivate. Unfortunately, though, for overall general career advice, I don't really have a lot to say about this because I feel like I got incredibly lucky with the opportunities when I graduated and just a ton of factors. And I'm not saying that I didn't work hard necessarily. I just needed to work hard and use that to be in the right places at the right time, right? I wouldn't have gotten my first job grading CS papers or my first sort of mini internship if I hadn't been prepared, but also if those people didn't need additional help at that time. And so it's sort of a product of both how much you work for it, but also where you're at. And unfortunately right now, I think the overall luck factor, if you want to describe it for the labor market, is pretty bad. All in all though, I think that it is still worth it if you can get a job in tech, but it's just no longer the sort of free ride that it had been for a decent amount of time. Not saying that it was necessarily just a totally, you could just walk in the door, hand your resume, and you would get like a multi-six-figure job working at Google or something like that. But it has never really felt like it's been harder than it is now in order to get a job, and especially a job in tech. And finally, some discussion about if you had a little bit of money to invest, how I would invest it. And honestly, for me, I would just invest it in the same way that I do now. And honestly, I am a very boring investor in that regard. I don't do anything exceptional. I don't do anything crazy. I just kind of put my money in index funds and move on with my day, doing other things. You know about my hobbies if you've seen that Business Insider video. In general, though, the advice or the thing that I tell everyone who asks for just overall general advice can be boiled down to 6 words: save diligently, invest wisely, wait patiently. I do hear about the mania in the markets about AI, about sort of semiconductor stocks, precious metals, when that was a big thing at the beginning of the year. And I do enjoy seeing some of my friends and coworkers talk about it and sometimes investing in those things as well. But to me, looking at that, right, there is an opportunity there to make a ton of money. But to me, I don't feel like I need to take on that additional risk in order to earn money at a pace that I don't feel like I necessarily need to, or to earn additional money that I don't feel like I actually need. And so the net result of that is that if I want to sleep better at night, then I'll just take the slow path to wealth. This also goes for, there was a question about sort of alternative assets. This person was primarily talking about card collecting, and I guess crypto kind of falls into that similar bucket of things that are interesting, things that I sometimes follow, but not necessarily something that I really invest in because A, I don't really know the space really well, and B, I don't feel like it has the same sort of risk profile as just investing in low-cost, broad market index funds. That's just sort of how I approach it though, and that's not to say that investing in this method is the right call for really everyone, no matter your situation, right? Everyone's situation is a little bit different. You might want to be a little bit more conservative, even if that means giving up on some of your gains. And you might want to be a little bit more aggressive if you decide that that's the route that you want to take. It's not really my cup of tea, but I mean, you do you. But those are some of the questions that I got, and that is my net worth for the month. So in any case, I will see you all for the next video. Take care.